Welcome to the Criminal Defense Show, where we dive into the exciting world of criminal defense attorneys and learn from their unique insights and experiences. Today, joining me, we have Mr. Shane Phelps. He is a criminal defense attorney and founder of the law office of Shane Phelps. He is a leading trial lawyer. He's tried over 200 jury trials for everything from DWI to capital murder. He is a forensic lawyer scientist, which, by the way, I think there's fewer than 100 of those in the entire country. And he is a board-certified criminal law specialist and former U.S. Marine.
Yes.
Welcome to the show, Shane.
Thank you very much for having me.
We're so glad to have you. You have so much valuable insight. You are the man when it comes to your accolades and how much experience you have. And I'm so excited to get to know you better and have you talk about your background a little bit first and foremost. So tell us a little bit about how you got started as a lawyer.
Well, I got started as a prosecutor. I had wanted to be and I'm not quite sure why, but I had wanted to be a lawyer. And particularly if you asked me when I was 12 years old what I wanted to do, I would have told you I wanted to be a crusading young district attorney. I think that came from TV shows and comic books and things like that. My grandfather was a lawyer and apparently a fairly well-regarded trial lawyer. I never met him. He died before I was born, about 6 months actually. But I certainly heard stories my whole life. So it was always kind of assumed that, at least for me, that I was headed for law school. My parents did not have money. Father was a career Marine. Mom was a bookkeeper. And I didn't have much active parenting as I was growing up. So I was pretty much on my own. Didn't have any way to get to college. So I joined the Marine Corps and I spent 3 years in the Marine Corps. I did that for the GI Bill. Turned out to be one of the best things I ever did. I was a journalist in the Marines, so I learned to write well. And that's where I first started my passion for photography. But when I got out of the Marines, I came to Texas. Applied to one law school because it was the only one that didn't charge me to apply. And that was University of Texas School of Law in Houston. I wanted to be a prosecutor and turned down a job actually in Santa Monica, right at the corner of Ocean Avenue and Santa Monica Boulevard for a large law firm out there. And I turned down that job to take a position as an assistant DA in Houston and really hit the ground running. I was in court every day for 3 years. I tried probably before I left, 60, 70 trials. From there, I went to the Attorney General's office where I was the chief special prosecutor for the Attorney General's office. It's a pretty cool job. I traveled all over the state of Texas prosecuting high-profile cases, public corruption, death penalty cases, and things like that. I was a young bachelor with a little red Miata traveling all over the state of Texas. It was a good life. I became Deputy Attorney General for Criminal Justice for Texas in 1999, actually, and did that for a couple of years. And then my wife and I, we had gotten married, came to Brazos County, which is Bryan College Station, which is where the George Bush Presidential Library is, and Texas A&M University, which turns out to be a real boon for us. I was the first assistant DA here for 10 years and went into private practice 10 years ago. Just kind of got mad at my boss and walked out the door. A little scary, but it worked out very well. So
what was it that attracted you specifically to criminal defense?
I've always wanted to be involved in criminal law and did that as a prosecutor for a number of years and tried pretty much everything a prosecutor could try. I had a very strong feeling as a prosecutor that the power that I wielded was something that if I didn't wield it responsibly, I could hurt a lot of people. And so I was a very careful prosecutor. I was an aggressive prosecutor and I was very effective, but I was really careful. And I used to tell young prosecutors I mentored, you want the best defense attorney you can have on the other side because you're going to make mistakes. You're a human being. And when you make mistakes, people suffer for that. And a good defense attorney on the other side is going to find those issues that you may be ignoring or just not seeing and make sure they get in front of a judge or a jury so that ultimately the process is supposed to be fair. So I had a very strong opinion back then that that defense attorneys were just as important as anybody else, frankly, if not more so than anybody else in the system. And I found that I was more effective when I kind of tried to put myself in the place of a defense lawyer. What would I do if I were a defense attorney to defend this case? Where do I see? And then so the weaknesses of the case would kind of introduce themselves to me, and I would be prepared for those. And so that's one of the reasons I think I had a kind of a ferocious reputation in the courtroom, is because defense attorneys would think of stuff and I'd already thought of it. But that was what became most intellectually stimulating to me. So while I hadn't planned on leaving the DA's office under the way that I did, which is, as I said, getting mad at my boss and crosswise and just leaving, and there was a lot of fear and anxiety that came along with that, I took to it pretty quickly and pretty proudly. I really feel like what I'm doing in criminal defense is probably one of the most noble things you can do with a law license.
I absolutely agree. And it's unfortunate some criminal defense attorneys get a bad rap, but there's attorneys like you who exist and really do level up the entire profession.
Well, that's kind of you. Just like any profession, prosecutors same way. There's some very fine prosecutors out there, thoughtful, understanding the power that they wield and how to do it responsibly and not taking unnecessary chances. Over the course of the last 10 years, my passion for being a criminal defense lawyer has just increased exponentially year after year. But I've always thought that was the reason that I have been fortunate to be successful as a trial lawyer, is that I really believe in what I'm doing.
And that shows for sure.
Well, I appreciate that.
Well, as far as the day-to-day management of your practice, I'm curious, what things in the firm are you responsible for as the founder?
Well, pretty much everything. But where I think I kind of unexpectedly excelled when I went out into private practice, and to kind of put that in perspective, I mean, I literally walked out the door. A friend of mine had a building downtown, let me land there, had about 150 square feet. I started doing things to boost the visibility of my practice and my visibility. Now, I had a pretty good reputation in the community as a prosecutor before I left, and that helped. There was no question about that, name ID and that sort of thing. But the part of having a law practice, of building the law practice, of the business side of the law practice, and most importantly, the marketing aspect of the law practice, it is really complicated stuff. I don't know how to do search engine optimization. And if you don't have search engine optimization on your website is worthless to you. Your family's going to like it and everything. But, I don't have anywhere near the time to both practice law and think about things like, analytics and search engine optimization and Google ads and all that stuff. I don't even understand that stuff. But my marketing company does. It's just something you can't handle on your own. And if you can, then you're not spending enough time practicing law.
Yeah, there's aren't enough hours in the day to do everything. There's too many things, right?
There are too many things. And it's just one of those things that I know. And I did a ton of research about that because I did a lot of that stuff myself when I first started the AVO website, the Find Law website, those things. The smartest marketing decision I ever made was to hire you guys. And it was scary because it's not inexpensive, but I cannot underestimate or understate the quality of service and attention that I've gotten since I signed with Scorpion. I made that decision several years ago. I told Carrie Ann, who kind of runs my program, I hired Scorpion, and within 6 months, I had to hire additional lawyers to handle the caseload. So that probably was the most significant decision. And working with Scorpion on what that website looks like, but also the advertising, the pay per click stuff, and I kind of let you guys handle that, but I do still stay involved. The other thing is I've been very involved in the community, and it's not just a marketing ploy, but I think lawyers would be naive to think that getting out into the community and doing philanthropic stuff that is important. I would do it regardless, but it has its benefits. So I have, it's hard for me to say no when people call me and say, would you sponsor this fundraiser for this nonprofit? I do that all the time. But it does have its benefits. Here, I'll show you one. I'm on the board of directors of Voices for Children, which is a CASA program here, and I sponsor their annual superhero fun run. So, and it's not inexpensive. I think I paid them $5,000, but everybody who showed up, all the people who are running around this fun run were wearing this. I don't know if you can see that, right? So
Nice.
That's pretty good marketing.
I'd say so.
Totally unintended. I didn't ask for it, but it just happened. So I get involved with community activities like that. I've been on the board of directors of the Chamber of Commerce. Here, we have a very active chamber, and we did a groundbreaking ribbon cutting kind of thing when we opened my law firm. They brought 50 people into my law firm to wander around, and we fed them and gave them wine, and they did this wonderful speech about, what a great lawyer I was. It was really cool. And it was nice to just be able to show off the office. But everybody who came walked away thinking, well, that Shane Phelps is a lawyer, at least on my radar. And so I get a lot of phone calls from local people. I get a lot of referrals that people just know me in the community. One of the proudest things that I've ever been able to do, that I never would have been able to do as a prosecutor, is I remember how hard it was to go through law school and college, paying my way as a person that was just pretty much on my own, just fresh out of the military. A&M has a strong veterans resource program, and it's gotten stronger in the last 10 years. Gene and I, in the law firm, endowed the very first veterans scholarship at Texas A&M. That is a scholarship in perpetuity. Every semester, some young combat veteran trying to work through college gets a check from us. And, so that's connected us with the A&M community in a significant way. And again, not the reason to do it. I did it because I wanted to help people who were in my position when I went through college and law school. But it does have that benefit. Just getting out in the community and doing things in the community is, I think, a huge part of what a law firm should be doing if you want to be a law firm that is recognized as a leader in the community.
Absolutely. That's really interesting. The Chamber of Commerce is one of the things you mentioned, which I feel like is probably pretty underutilized by a lot of individuals.
I think it is, and I think that's a huge mistake.
I think that's really worth taking away from this conversation if you're listening. I also think it's really interesting about your community involvement piece. Tell me about Atticus Finch Day.
Oh, so I guess it's been a number of years ago. I actually started it when I was a prosecutor. We had a very dysfunctional courthouse. People were at each other's throats. There were scandals. There were people going to jail. It was a horrible place to work. And there was no cohesiveness in our legal community here. And we had a bar association, but frankly, it was a non-entity. And there just wasn't any collective sense of, we're all kind of working toward the same end here, and we can do it collegially. I tried a case as a prosecutor. It was actually a lawyer I was prosecuting. And it was a difficult trial. And every once in a while, I get a little tunnel visioned in trial, and did so in this case. That case was over day one. She was going to be convicted, and she was, and deserved to be. She insisted on representing herself, but the judge appointed a standby counsel, a gentleman named Phil Banks, who's a lawyer here in town. And there was a point in that trial where I decided I wanted to get into a fact that this lawyer had got kicked out of law school for plagiarizing or something as a punishment. I didn't need it, but I was just, I was in the fight. I had the warrior madness, I think they call it. And it was going to delay the trial, and it didn't need to be delayed. And the lawyer, Phil, was on the other side. We found ourselves right in front of the jury box. We were 6 feet away from where all these 12 jurors were, and the judge, and it was a packed courtroom. And we were nose to nose. And I looked down and I saw he had his fist clenched and he's red-faced. and we almost came to blows in the courtroom.
Wow.
You get into that battle passion. And he said an uncharitable thing. I responded uncharitably. The judge said, let's take a break. And, Phil came immediately to the office, and I liked Phil. We hugged. We've become very close friends. We showed up for final arguments, both of us, just coincidentally dressed in seersucker suits, and bow ties, kind of the quintessential Southern lawyer kind of outfit. And it occurred to me after a while that, I hadn't read the book, To Kill a Mockingbird for a very long time. So I reread the book and realized that most lawyers kind of point to Atticus Finch as a role model, like, look at what we can do. But we fall short all the time, like Phil and I fell short in the courtroom. And so I thought, well, what if we were to get together once a year and everybody dresses up in seersucker suits? I even arranged a discount at the local Joseph A. Banks. And my wife makes these insane designer cookies, sugar cookies. And we'd get together, we'd have a guest, one of our local lawyers or somebody come in, and they would read excerpts from To Kill a Mockingbird and talk about why they were inspired by that. And the goal was that we would come together once a year with an idea to commit ourselves or recommit ourselves to the ideals that we valued in Atticus Finch, that we would acknowledge that there was a great deal of good, if we are so motivated, that we can do with our law degrees, like Atticus Finch did. And that we don't have to tear each other apart in the process of zealously representing our clients. And so we started this thing. There were probably 10 or 15 of us, maybe, in just on the first floor of the courthouse. And it snowballed. And, the next year it was a bunch more lawyers. The next year it was a bunch more, to the point where we've actually outgrown the facility that we use. The last time we did it, we had more than 150 people, standing room only. We've had some pretty insane guests over the years that I've invited. And Frank, I pay for this, and it's costing me about $10,000 a year, but it's worth every penny. I'm kind of the MC along with Phil. We remind people while we're there, and we hear from some of the best lawyers in the country. Rusty Hardin has been a guest speaker. We had the former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Texas, Wallace Jefferson, who descended from slaves and was able to talk about, now he's the first African-American on the Supreme Court, and now he's Chief Justice. Just an amazing. We had Michael Morton. I don't know if you're familiar with Michael Morton, but he's a towering figure in Texas criminal jurisprudence. He spent 25 years in prison for murdering his wife, and he was innocent, and went to the legislature and changed the law in Texas. One of the most decent human beings ever. And he spoke. He was our 10th anniversary speaker, and he brought the crowd to tears and a standing ovation. And people love it. They get together, the fellowship. We've made little challenge coins for Atticus Finch Day. We put together, let's see, so this is the 10th anniversary. I don't know if you can see it, but when Michael Morton was our guest. And I always bring this with me, kind of our, inspiration. That's Gregory Peck when he was starring in To Kill a Mockingbird, which is a wonderful movie. So it has become a big deal. It's been covered in the Texas Bar Journal. I don't know if I'm supposed to get off screen like this, but we run the Texas Bar Journal. That's Phil and me.
No.
It's become a big deal, and hopefully will be replicated, around the country, around the state. I just think it's so important for lawyers to get together and understand that our law degrees come with a great deal of responsibility, and that we need to be friendlier than we are. So
it's so amazing. And for you, it's not just about showing up for your community, but actually building a community of lawyers. And everyone has, I think, the power to do that. They just don't really realize it. So I think that's a really powerful story.
I think a lot of lawyers don't understand, or maybe don't appreciate, or haven't thought, you can do whatever you want. I mean, and it can be incremental and then snowball from there. But it's just a matter of making the decision to be a part of your community and make a difference in your community and in your state, either through your legal advocacy, appellate advocacy, or for getting out in your community and making it a better place.
Well, Shane, it's been wonderful talking with you today. You've given so much valuable information, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to do that today.
Well, thanks for taking the time to ask me all those questions, and hopefully some of what we've discussed today will help other lawyers, be more successful.
I think it absolutely will. Well, if you have found today's episode helpful, which I'm sure you will, please share it with a friend. It helps us out tremendously and also helps get the word out to other people who can use this information. You can also check out our show notes over on our website, scorpion.co. That's .co, no M. We thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.